And we were working with the NFT standards on Icon, which were based off the NFT standards on Ethereum, the NFT standards on Solana, Near, Polygon, Base. Like all these chains are the same, right? They have this concept that in terms from the on-chain perspective, you're only storing an ID of a token and a pointer to like an off-chain place where the data of the asset is stored. So I started to dig more into this and I just couldn't believe my mind. I feel like the whole industry was gaslighting me because they were saying like these are on-chain assets, and here I came to find out that the only thing on-chain is a number, like a number that is owned by an address, a number that's mapped to something off-chain. Like from the smart contract side, I actually cannot get any data about the asset. So I went on like a 2-week deep dive to find out if my understanding of this was correct, because I just couldn't believe it that the industry could be built around this, on-chain asset, but the asset is off-chain. It was just very weird because a lot of people I respected, they were so excited about the technology. I was like, how can we get so excited about this? So unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I guess, after the research I did, I came to the conclusion that yes, indeed, my understanding was correct. These NFTs that people refer to as on-chain assets are actually on-chain references to off-chain assets. And I knew that we couldn't do anything more in terms of what we want to achieve on our roadmap with these NFT standards. To be honest, I was a bit depressed at that point because we had like put in so much time on the branding side, and I always just had this assumption that the technology would be like extraordinary, and once I learn about it, it will be great. But once I learned about it, it was like very disappointing. So at some point I was scrolling through Reddit or maybe Twitter, and this new blockchain called Sui caught my attention, and my whole mental model up to that point was we need to go somewhere that allows us to store and parse the data on chain. And this like advertisement for Sui that I saw was like talking about objects. So I started doing a bit more research on it, and it ended up being exactly what we needed at exactly the right time.
Hello everyone, welcome to Just the Metrics podcast. Today I sit down with BL and Kotaro from Studio Mirai. BL and Kotaro has built one of the most engaged NFT communities in all of Web3. Today we talk about Sui, Walrus, and some of the most exciting projects they are building. So let's dive into the conversation with BL and Kotaro. So welcome both of you.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here.
So before we go into the details of Studio Mirai, let's start from the beginning. What were you guys doing like even before interacting with Web3? What were you guys doing before all of this?
Should I go first? Since I got into Web3 first. Yeah, so I got into Web3 first. And at the time, I was actually a musician in Las Vegas. So after I went to school for music business and technology, I worked in the music world for about like 10 years. And in 2016, I was in Las Vegas. I was doing like a sound design and a musician gig there. And I just happened to have like a lot of free time. And during that free time, I stumbled upon Web3. Back then, it was really just like Bitcoin, Ethereum maybe, and XRP. Sorry, it was not 2016, it was 2018. And it kind of caught my interest because it seemed like a new technology, and I was always kind of a nerd when I grew up. So it caught my interest And for maybe 1 or 2 years, I was mostly just involved as an investor. That's what we like to call ourselves. But back then it was really just no one really knew what was happening. We knew there were these coins, and yeah. So I got in, started buying some Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, and just doing a lot of research. But it wasn't until 2019 or even 2020 when I started to get more into the tech side of stuff. But we can get more into that in a bit. But that's how I got into crypto, just in my free time. Just read about it, and it was interesting.
Cool.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah.
Kotaro, I mean.
Doxed. Yeah, so I was in school. I studied economics when I was in college. And when I was doing I only studied economics so I can take the marketing course classes because I couldn't get a high enough GPA to actually get into business school. But around like my last year of college, I picked up like a camera for the first time. And from then on, I was like, I want to be like a videographer, and then like let the creativity kind of take over. Of course, my Asian parents was not too happy about that. Son goes to school for 5 years and then wants to be a filmmaker. That's like the worst nightmare. So I came out of school. I got like a job in marketing, and it slowly kind of grew into like independent filmmaker. Like I just got super lucky at one event. My boss at the time told me to go to this event. Hey, Ben, go here and take some photos with your iPhone. I'm like, I can do one better. I brought my camera. I did like a proper shoot. Came back the next morning, full video, all the audio edited, done. And they're like, you did this last night? I'm like, yeah, I did this last night. And I actually ended that job, and I went back as like a independent filmmaker. I ended up doing videos for that school, pretty much all the schools around Mass. There was like Suffolk, MIT, UMass, a bunch of like optometry schools. And I did just like a bunch of corporate work. I did like music videos, just anything for me to get some creativity flow. And then COVID hit, and I was all the schools were shut down. I was like, crap, I need to make some money. And Brian at this time, he was working in blockchain communications writer for the Icon blockchain, which was actually the chain that we started everything on. And he's like, man, look at these pictures of these apes that people are selling for millions of dollars on this chain. I bet we can do something similar. I'm like, yeah, maybe we can do something similar. So at that time, I pulled my best friend Mike. He's like the story writer behind kind of like the actual lore of the Tamashi and our IP. Brought him together. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. This is my idea. Let's cook. And then that's kind of how everything began.
It's cool, right? When you talked about like your parents' response, it's like anyone with an Asian background knows how your parents will react to it.
Yeah, there was like one point where my mom was like, okay, you got 1 year. 1 year, it doesn't work out. You're coming back to the cubicle. You're working a 9 to 5. You're working in banking. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to do that. So that's why we pushed very, very hard for the first year. And then like right like a week before my trial period ended, she's like, okay, I'll give you 6 more months. I'm like, bet. Then that's when we kind of exploded.
When did you like hone into the idea of like Studio Mirai? What was that moment when it's like everything came together? Initially, any idea would be like very it would be very ill-defined about what at some point you would say, okay, this is it. This has to exist. We are doing it. So what was that like? When did the idea become like clearer?
Yeah, I can take that, and then Brian can take the second part of that. The Studio Mirai began only as a storytelling IP. Like we had no expectations for what was like what it was gonna become. It was pretty much like we started storytelling. We had this like book. When we just released chapters, we released the characters one by one, and eventually like the way we released the characters, I think ended up forming a bit of the story. So like back in the day, we minted each Tamashi for 150 ICX. We did one a day for 100 days, pretty much. And those 100 days, we consistently did events. We did Discord, just chatting. Even if it was 2 people, like we'll still do it. And we did it every single day. We ended up hosting everyday events for like a year and a half, which is pretty crazy if you think about how long a year and a half is. And that's how we kind of built our initial core. And through this time, people got like really into the story. The story evolved. Kind of the whole thing was like, if you own the Tamashi character, you can like, meet with the writer to kind of, determine your own path. Like there's some decisions. Do you choose order? Do you choose chaos? Like what kind of character do you want to have? And eventually, people just really like that. And now, like, I think the floor, I haven't checked, I think it's like 200,000 ICX. And it's definitely grown a lot since then. I guess Brian can probably talk about when it started having some more, kind of like maybe when it became a venture studio, like a community venture studio.
Well, ever since the beginning, I think the goal of Studio Mirai was just Kotaro and I wanted to do something as a family business. Because before that, we never really had any chance to do something together. Because I was more focused on the music side, he was doing more stuff on the corporate side, and we were never in the same place. So just never had a chance to really work together. And when this blockchain thing came around, and I knew that he was interested in the art world, and like you said, back then these Bored Apes were selling for so much, that kind of got his attention, and that kind of kickstarted us to start something. In the beginning, it was very much focused on just the storytelling, and that was mostly because my technical, I guess, expertise back then was still quite low. I just got into the space. Smart contract dev was still quite difficult, and we were mostly relying on infrastructure created by other people to help us do what we wanted to do. So in the beginning, a lot of the stuff that we were doing was focused on the non-technical stuff. And I guess looking back, that might have been good because it really allowed us to like focus on the art, to focus on the brand. But the long-term goal was always just, I wanted to do something that would benefit, some part of the world. And ultimately that would require me to learn more about the technology and actually be able to build stuff. So eventually we pivoted into what we call a venture studio now. And the premise is to just leverage our community to help us build stuff that we think will be impactful to the world. And because we have this community, we have a group of people who are on our side, who share the view of the world that we have, as well as the future. And that's actually a really underrated part of Web3, because when you think of all these new dApps that launch, what are the vibes like at the start? It's very like me versus you. If you get more yield, that means I don't get as much yield. You're trying to get in and out as much as possible. And it's just a very like toxic vibe. And we felt like in order to launch a really successful product, we need a group of people to help us nurture it, to have the emotional part built in to the point where they like potentially like give up that yield. They're not against each other. They're helping us actually make this thing happen. So that's why we put in so much work to build a really core group of people that we can trust to help us bootstrap the products that we build.
To be honest, like Studio Mirai has like a huge, like everything you create, it's a success, in its own way. So it's that shows how strong some communities are.
Yeah, well, I would say that in terms of size, our community is actually not that big. What our community is really good at is they're really engaged. And the issue with a lot of communities in Web3 it's very hard to tell if they're there because they like you or if they're there because of the
Mhm.
yield that you give them or something like that, right? So that's when we were approaching building out a community, we were really trying to uh, like not think about the number of people too much because quite frankly, it's even so hard to tell now. Like so many people that you see on X, they could just be bots. Um, so I think that's something that we've really done a good job at is to create a group of people who are also willing to like meet up in the real world. And we have these like things all around the world and people actually show up, they talk to each other. It's not only like online. So I think that really helps, build a layer of trust that you don't get if, it's just like a group of people on X or on Discord or something.
And you mentioned that you originally started on Icon and then moved on to Sui. So what was missing in the other chains?
Yeah, so before Sui, we actually explored quite a number of chains, including Icon, Avalanche, Solana, Near, and Polygon. And what started this is like we launched these collections on Icon, and they were very successful. Um, but it got to the point where I was starting to get a bit more comfortable with the technology and start to really contextualize like what this technology actually is. And one day, I just hit a brick wall where I was thinking we want to do something more. I think it was for Prime Machin specifically, where we wanted to start with black and white and then let people change it afterward, which is what we see on Sui now. And we were working with the NFT standards on Icon, which were based off the NFT standards on Ethereum, the NFT standards on Solana, Near, Polygon base. Like all these chains are the same, right? They have this concept that in terms from the on-chain perspective, you're only storing an ID of a token and a pointer to like an off-chain place where the data of the asset is stored. So I started to dig more into this and I just couldn't believe my mind. I feel like the whole industry was gaslighting me because they were saying like these are on-chain assets. And here I came to find out that the only thing on chain is a number, like a number that is owned by an address, a number that's mapped to something off chain. Like from the smart contract side, I actually cannot get any data about the asset. So I went on like a 2-week deep dive to find out if my understanding of this was correct because I just couldn't believe it that the industry could be built around this, on-chain asset, but the asset is off-chain. It was just very weird because a lot of people I respected, they were so excited about the technology. And I was like, how can we get so excited about this? So unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I guess, after the research I did, I came to the conclusion that yes, indeed, my understanding was correct. These NFTs that people refer to as on-chain assets are actually on-chain references to off-chain assets. And I knew that we couldn't do anything more in terms of what we want to achieve on our roadmap with these NFT standards. So I was getting like, to be honest, I was a bit depressed at that point because we had like put in so much time on the branding side. And I always just had this assumption that the technology would be like extraordinary. And once I learn about it, it will be great. But once I learned about it, it was like very disappointing. So at some point, I was scrolling through Reddit or maybe Twitter, and this new blockchain called Sui caught my attention. And my whole mental model up to that point was we need to go somewhere that allows us to store and parse the data on chain. And this like advertisement for Sui that I saw was like talking about objects. So I started doing a bit more research on it, and it ended up being exactly what we needed at exactly the right time. And like it just happened to find Sui after telling Ben, I was like, Ben, we're moving away from Icon. And his reaction was just like, no, like our community was built there. It's never going to work. You have no idea what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And no, like we can't do anything else on Icon or Ethereum or any other chain that has predefined standards that like a predefined standard just boxes you in. It defines what you're able to do. So we wanted to break out of that. That was like, Sui lets us break out of that. So after that, that's how we found Sui.
Yeah, so my experience was, I think, so his was just like, all right, decisions made, we gotta do it. I was just like, all right, we gotta figure out a way to actually move and like achieve support. So back when we started, this was 2021. Wait, we found in 2021. We moved in 2023, and both me and Brian were like super awkward, like antisocial, super awkward. Both of us were, and one of us had to go and do BD, so that had to be me because Brian was like, "I'm definitely not doing that." So I got sent out to do like all these. I went to all the events for Sui to try to get like support from foundation to try to do BD. I was so awkward. Like I remember the first person I met at a Sui event was freaking it was Costas, and um I had no idea he was the one of the one of the co-founders of His Allows. And my initial conversation with him was I was just telling him like, bro, I really like these branding of these napkins. They got the Sui logo on them, and he was just like, oh yeah, I'm like yeah. It was so awkward. I wonder if he remembered that. Probably not. And then like he asked me, he's like, oh, what kind of project I'm doing? Oh, I'm like, go from Studio Mirai. We're an NFT project. We're doing like merch. We're doing all these things. Like we're coming to Sui, and say, oh, cool, cool. And then I like had nothing else to say, and I was like, damn, I gotta work on my pitch. Without going like 20 minutes into my whole entire like life history. But kind of went to ETH Denver, went to all these different events, started to like see the same people at all the events, and those are the people that we became really close to kind of coming up. So like some of those people are like Sean from Sui and S. That's in the future kind of foreshadowed the Eon creation, the NFT collection. There are people that I constantly saw. There was like Turbos, Ted from Turbos. There was like Tommy from Typus, Damien from Bucket, and these are all people that we eventually did some collaborations with. And slowly, people started kind of realizing who we were, and like they recognized us. Still at the stage we were like NFT wise, we were like not crazy yet. It wasn't until like Basecamp. So Basecamp was the first time that we actually really felt like we were on Sui. We launched Enforcer Machin during mainnet, and at that point it was a prototype. We launched 1333 NFTs with a plan to launch 2,000 more like later on, because I don't know if you were here during Sui mainnet for NFTs, but that was absolute disaster. Like that was like basically one of the marketplaces low key, rugged. And like I think like from the mainnet days, I think only a few projects, I can't even count them on one hand, still exist. And we were one of them. And it's been taking a while for the Enforcer to like go through its like proper upgrade. Because like the tech just kept evolving, and we just kept being like, okay, we can add this, we can add this, we can add this, we can add this. And now it's like evolved into like Brian's building like the dynamic NFT standard, and that's what the Enforcer is gonna live on. So while this time was happening, the Enforcers like community like formed, and we're like, I really don't want to drop 2,000 more NFTs from this collection. So we decided to, as a team, collect 222 to burn it. So the collection is left with 1111. And the original collection was like you can swap traits and stuff. So it's gonna be 1111 with 3333 worth of traits. So at that time, Enforcer was like our second collection. We already launched Prime on Icon, and when we were migrating it, there were still like 2,000 NFTs left, like 2,400 or something NFTs left to be minted, and we minted them the day before Basecamp. I remember because um, I flew on the plane, and I did not have Wi-Fi on my plane. I was like, holy crap, what happened to the mint? We turns out when we landed, we minted out in 100 seconds. Like super smooth mint. I honestly think it's still the smoothest mint to date with no issues. Everyone always talks about how smooth the Prime Machin mint was. And like my DMs with thousands of messages. Lands of Paris. I had my full like moderator team meet me at the airport, being like, Kotaro, you have to post. You have to post. We're live on this marketplace. People have to trade. Hurry up. I'm like, relax. I just landed. And I literally at the airport creating a graphics post on Twitter. We're live on this. We're live on that. And then like I remember that like Basecamp was, if it just felt like a movie, because everybody when we went to Basecamp, everyone was like, oh, Kotaro, do you have 15 seconds? Do you have 30 seconds? Can I talk to you for 5 minutes? And I'm like, these are people that ignored us, back at the other events. And it was just that one ultra smooth mint that kind of sparked everything. That was April, and then it's just been up only since. But that was like the first time that we were like, oh crap, like there's some spotlight on us now.
What made that difference? Like when you said like Mint went like really smooth compared to like other projects. What are things that made the difference actually?
BL was a dev, but I'll let BL talk about it.
This is an interesting question. I think that we always delay. Like we're kind of famous for never being on time, but then when it comes out, it's usually like pretty good. And I feel like a lot of projects rush things. And when it comes to something as important as an NFT mint, it's not important in the grand scheme of the world, but for that moment, it's very important for your community and your team. And to rush that is just a gamble, I think. So we took a lot of steps. We probably like over engineered the back end and the back end technology like way more than we had to. And we did things in a way that no other team was doing in terms of how we were querying for the data on the mint site to not overload the RPC nodes. Like we were building multiple layers between the end user and the RPC node, which in most cases, dApps are directly calling the RPC node directly from the web browser. But in our case, we had built out this really good system to reduce load as much as possible, to make sure the front end was still snappy. And ultimately, that resulted in this like really streamlined way to mint. And it was quite a bit of work because we also had to, because back then there was there kind of was a standardized way to do the NFT side of stuff, but it didn't really fit our use case because again, it was kind of assuming the same model of you're just linking to an IPFS picture off chain. We wanted to show the world that on Sui, we can actually store all of the pictures on chain and store all of the data on chain, allow people to change from black and white to color. And when that happens, you actually destroy the black and white picture and get some Sui back. So we were trying to like make a statement with all of these different technologies and features and to package it all up into a very like a great product experience that people actually want to own and buy. So it was so many different things. Like we were not just trying to put out a collection we were really trying to showcase like 5 different technologies of Sui that to this day, no other collection has attempted. And so it was just like a ton of work. It was a ton of testing. It was thinking outside the box, really getting to know how Sui works under the hood, to make sure all of the things went smoothly.
Could you mention those 5 different technologies that you are trying to showcase?
I definitely can name 5. I think there's actually more than 5, but one was the storage rebate on Sui. So when you destroy an object on Sui, you get some Sui back. And when you just tell someone that, like, there's not really much impact because they can't relate to it. They just feel like, oh, I destroy an object, I get some Sui back, so what? So we wanted to frame that educational point in a way that people would grasp. And to do that, we built out this system where it starts as black and white. The colored picture is actually a new object. And when you destroy the black and white one to equip the color one on, which happens in the span of one transaction, you actually destroy the black and white one and you get some Sui back. So when you frame that educational point into like a consumer user experience flow, then it has more impact. Like, oh, I destroyed my black and white picture to put the color one on, and because I destroyed the black and white, I got some Sui back. So it's more tangible than just saying, oh, when you destroy an object, you get some Sui back. So the storage rebate was one. Another one was storing the pictures on chain. So this went through like 2 months of research. Back then, there was no documentation about this. Like, still to this day, no one else has done it. We were able to store 4K pictures on chain. We developed a way to basically split each picture into a bunch of chunks, and to upload each chunk in a parallelized way. So it was very quick. And we built out this whole system to store the prime Machin pictures on chain in a very low cost way. And it ended up being 100 times cheaper than Solana, and 1,000 times cheaper than Bitcoin inscriptions. So that was another showcase of Sui. Like, we can have on-chain data and it's very cheap, which, is not possible on any other chain. Another thing we did was transfer to object. Before we came out with the collection, where the idea is like you can send stuff to the prime Machin directly, the owner of the prime Machin can then, take that object. Before that happened, this concept of airdrops was always to people's addresses. And we came in and was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if instead you did airdrops like to the prime Machin directly instead? Because it adds this new layer of engagement. Because if we drop stuff to a prime Machin and it happens to be listed on a marketplace, what if it's listed for like 300 Sui, but it actually has like 350 Sui worth of stuff that it owns? So like, if you're paying attention to that kind of stuff, then you would instantly buy that prime Machin, right? To claim all the stuff because you actually made some money on it. And it was just like a lot more engaging to treat these prime Machin as actual robots in a digital world that can own stuff. So that was another thing that we did. We were also the first to use SuiNS to map names directly to prime Machin. So like, if you go on a wallet right now, you can type in like 1234 at prime Machin, and it will actually transfer stuff directly to the prime Machin. So this idea of giving characters in a digital world the ability to own stuff, the ability to have a name, that's what the metaverse is actually supposed to be about. But that whole narrative never worked out because the standards that those projects were built on, like they didn't have a way to express objects on chains. Like you can't have a universe where there's no data in the world. That's not really a world. Yeah. So I think I named 4 things. Fifth thing obviously is just the transition from black and white to color, and then from color to custom. I think it was one of the first use cases for the dynamic aspect of Sui. So yeah, I would say like those would be like 5 features of Sui that we were really looking to feature with the Prime Machin.
Kotaro, I believe you are this like super creative person. When you see like a chain that offers so much flexibility on what you can do, like what does that process like creating these ideas? Now you could feel like, oh, I can do all these things. So when PL was describing all these technical parts, like how was that ideation process happening?
Yeah, so just real quick before we dive in there, I want to mention when we were kind of thinking if the subnames for like each prime option was doable, like the Sui and S subnames, I think we actually front ran the subdomains for Sui and S. Like I remember there was a question we asked for like, is this possible? And they're like, I don't think so. I'm like, oh, we're gonna do it. So we front ran it by 1 weekend. I remember we posted the announcement on Friday, and then subnames officially announced on Monday. We totally front ran that whole campaign. So the creativity part, yeah. So I think like when we have sort of these different levels for Prime Mushroom, BL just spoke about black and white and color. We actually had another layer above that. So we had level 2 color, which basically means people, depending on which tier, there was basic, premium, and custom. They can customize more. So for example, basic, you can customize like the background, the skin color, some of the color traits inside. Premium, you can start changing the textures. Like if you had like if you want to make like a transparent t-shirt, you can do that. And then custom, you can like deal with that, like whatever you want. And then we actually have 1 tier above that, the Beyond tier, and it's basically all the collaborations. So when we were designing this and kind of like how we pitched the NFT collection is like when you go to other NFT collections in different ecosystems, right? You find a color you like, but you might not like the trait, and then you find the trait, and then you might not like the color, and it's kind of hard to really form like your identity around a specific character, and for our community to do like we can't expect people to do the same. It's just very difficult, especially if like you don't have any Photoshop skills and you can't just edit the JPEG. So in this case, people were given the chance to sort of like really choose the traits they love. That was like our whole pitch for Prime Option. Choose the traits you like, color them later. If you chose a black and white, you chose a already colored level 1, you can still upgrade level 2. Choose the exact colors that you want. Currently, our wait time for level 2 is like 7 months. There's a lot of people waiting in line to customize their PFP. And these people, like when they customize the level 2, like we don't expect everyone to do this process, but like the ones that do, they'll like never like sell their PFP. They'll never do, like it's theirs. Or they pick some crazy badass color with some badass trait and then they sell it. There's some people that don't want to wait 7 months to customize their own and rather buy someone else's. So people, the creativity around this is like you really get to choose your own identity, and then kind of like the collaboration stuff as well. Like the first collaboration that we got to do was this project called R2. They're a RWA art platform on Sui, and this collaboration was called Recreations. So with this, we actually got to collaborate with like actual IPs of paintings, Monet's Water Lilies, a Degas piece, and then a Henry Matisse piece. And there was like, which is crazy just to think about it. And we created these like 3 super dope Primarch. We announced them at Singapore last year, and we actually have 6 more coming. Eventually, there'll be 9 in total, 3 of each painting, and we really got to focus for like art is art. Like it's like the utility for the collection is literally just find a PFP you like and color that however you like, or leave it black and white. But like we don't tell people, like give you airdrop, we're gonna give you whitelist. We just happen to get these opportunities because I think people rally behind the idea of art for art. The people like the community vibes naturally that grew and grew and grew, and then kind of builds more influence around the ecosystem, and then that's why projects want to reward us. But like the basic utility is just like it's just a coloring book. Like people have flooded at us before, like, oh, they're not doing anything special, they're just doing coloring book. I'm like, yeah, it's just a coloring book. That's it. You're right. It's just a very expensive coloring book. It's a $1,000 coloring book.
That's where this part where like BL mentioned, you have like a really like it's not a really huge but a really engaged group of people behind this project. So that helps you to also get like amazing feedback when you push out some features or like products. That's a really valuable thing. And going back to this idea of Nozomi world, like what is it? I have seen it, but I have not yet understood that concept. Like, what is the vision behind it?
Yeah, so Nozomi is pretty much like the city that these characters live in. Like Nozomi world, like the world of Nozomi. Nozomi means hope. In the story, that's sort of like the entire the TLDR storyline is I don't want to spoil it too much. These characters, they like become obsessed with kind of like this dream world. Eventually uh like plugged like in the original storyline is these characters that are just regular humans, and then eventually like these humans, they like there's like a service that you can basically plug yourself in and never have to worry about stress ever again, like manufactured bliss. And some people were against it, some people were for it, some people already did it, some people were kidnapped, to be forced in there. And eventually like the storyline kicks off with like when them waking up, and it's like them waking up, finding out it's been like 20 years, and like all these people are plugged in, and I think don't want to spoil it because it's the story is pretty in depth. There's four books. There's like
Cool.
30 chapters in total. We have a manga coming out, so but it's this like whole storyline, and a lot of it was sort of co-produced by like the core community. And in the story, like the leader, Kasumi, she like always talks about hope. That was like something that her dad talked to her about. So Nozomi was the world that we decided, which is funny because it's the name of a Shinkansen, a bullet train in Japan. Sometimes I'll wear like a Nozomi, the Nozomi University a sweater in Japan. People are like, what's Nozomi University? But we sort of created like a brand around that. So Nozomi World is the IP. It's everything that's associated with the IP. So the Tamashi collection, the Prime Machin, the Immersive Machin, the Android Machin, which is currently a myth. And then we have like all of the merge, all the events, like Nozomi World. So like whenever we host these events, like the community is like part of this IP. Like if you come to an event and it's like we want to bring you into Nozomi, it's like we're also bringing you into our community.
So there will be you'll be revealing a lot of stuff, or something happening in Dubai along with the Sweet Base Camp. Is there some special event happening?
Yeah. So last year we hosted something in Bali. It was our first like so we last year we focused on like dinners and immersive experiences. So like when we host a dinner, it's not just like we go to like a McDonald's or a Chili's, and we eat some $1 meals. Like it's not like that. So we hosted some in Vietnam, in Korea. Like Korea is like we had this giant palace that we did it with some other sweet projects. In Vietnam, we had like a whole private resort. That was crazy. Taiwan, that was my like 30th birthday party. That one we had like a palace as well. It was pretty great. But we have these like immersive like dinners where it's like community vibes. Everyone always asks me like, "Oh, do you have any more spots? Do you have more spots?" Like, bro, we sold out like a day after we posted the event. So last year we did Mirai Bali, which we did with our cultural partners, Quantum Temple. They're a cultural project building on Sui, focusing around events. And that one we did, it was like 42 people, 42 community members, flew out to Bali. We had like a 5-day retreat, like in freaking, we had like private villas, we had police escorts everywhere we go. We had like crazy dinners and DJs and all these cultural experiences. And it was like, we're freaking amazing. We have a video that, like a video recap from it, and it's really good. And this year we're gonna have 2 events. The first one is gonna be obviously in Dubai. We couldn't let the opportunity slip because there's already so many people going for base camp. We're like, okay, we gotta do something crazy. So we have something crazy planned for the night before base camp starts, April 30th for our holders, and the video of that event will be done the night of. So we're going to do the crazy experience. Let's just say we're gonna be ripping through the sands of the desert. That's all I gotta say. We're gonna be shooting our own Dune movie, Dune 3, Rise of the Robots. And we're gonna be posting that, the night of, while our community members go to a bar and they drink away. I'll be sitting in some room with some editors finishing the video. And ideally by base camp, the morning of the base camp, you'll see the video. People will be talking about the crazy event last night. And our community will already be like friends, like ideally friends. Like this one's gonna be pretty big. I think we're aiming for 80 to 100 people. So it's gonna be great to see all of the holders there. And then we have one more in the end of the year in October. That's our like flagship event, end of the year retreat, and that one is like absolutely crazy. Like I'll tell you when we're done recording this, because I don't want to spill the redacted yet. But it's definitely gonna be our biggest event yet. And it it doesn't make sense until I tell you why. So I'll save that for the after podcast. But we are like focusing less on these dinners around the world, and we're focusing just on 2 like power events. But events is like super important for us. We originally had one planned in Europe, but we had to cancel it because of how crazy the one in October is, and how much I'm constantly blowing up the one in Dubai. Like the Dubai one started as like a little lunch, and then it just blew up to like Dune 3. So yeah, it just happens.
This will be super thrilling. Yeah, I mean the real life events are something like really it adds an incredibly it adds another like a really interesting layer on top of like what's happening online. So that's really interesting. And like can't wait for the announcement. So looking forward to that. And coming back to BL, I follow you in Twitter. Like when you post something, I get a notification because you play around with a lot of Walrus and a lot of Sui technology. Because I can see like you building so much stuff. So where does Walrus fit into all of what you're building? Because every day you are discovering something, posting something about Walrus. So you'll be one of the most knowledgeable person about Walrus in relation to a project like NFT project, like a media project like Studio Mirai. So where does Walrus fit into all of that?
Yeah, so Walrus is the most exciting project in blockchain for me, I think, in history, even more so than Sweet, I would say. Because for a really long time, like a blockchain and a surrounding ecosystem around a blockchain is sort of like how a computer works. The blockchain itself, so in this case, it would be Sui. It's most optimized for actually running the computes and not really storing a lot of stuff. And by a lot of stuff, I mean, like if you wanted to download a video and upload it to Sui, that might be like 3 or 4 gigs. You can't do that. And well, you could. It would cost like $11,000 or something though. So it's not really like the right thing. So for a long time, blockchains were stuck in this situation where it was like a computer that could only do compute but it can never store any files. And if you think about how you use the computer, you always have to store stuff. You know, like if you write a text file, you save it to your computer. If you're like recording a song, you have to save it somewhere. And currently, like until Walrus really came around, it was arguably like there was not a single blockchain ecosystem that offered you the ability to do compute and storage. So this is really important because when we're talking about digital assets beyond coins, like coins don't really need this, because when you're just doing like the finance side of stuff, you're just it's just a number. You know, if you lose on a trade, the number goes down. You know, if you gain on a trade, the number goes up. So when you're dealing with coins, the actual data that you need to store is not very much at all. But for use cases outside of DeFi, such as the NFT stuff, and NFT is just really a vague term that can capture anything from like artwork to a song to anything, right? When you have such a technology that can be applied to so many use cases in the creative space, you need to have storage, because in the creative space, people are making stuff. And when you make stuff, you need to store it. So in order for a blockchain-based asset to have any meaning and utility to someone in the creative fields, you have to answer the question, okay, I can tokenize the ownership on chain, but what about the actual data itself? For a long time, there was a separation right there. Like in the NFT standards on Ethereum and these other chains, you store the ownership part on chain, such as mapping the ID of a token to the address of the owner. But then that links to an IPFS link that's stored off chain. And that's really problematic because from the blockchain's perspective, it cannot actually verify the IPFS data is there. It's available. It doesn't even know what that data is, which is really strange. And we actually had an existential crisis about this issue when we were building out the music platform that we're working on. Is we had to figure out like, okay, the actual data about the songs, such as how long the song is, who composed it, and all these like fields that describe the song, that's on chain. But where were we going to put the actual sound files? We had this problem, like if we put it on IPFS, how does the Sui blockchain actually guarantee that those files are actually there? They're the right files. So when you have this disconnect between the ownership of the data and like the description of the data and the actual like matter of the assets, which would be like the actual asset itself, like the sound file or the art, that's just not good. Like, so when Walrus came out, it was kind of like Mistin Labs read my mind. So Mistin Labs read my mind once with Sui, because right then when Sui came out was when I needed objects. And then fast forward to right when I was having like a mental breakdown about where we're going to store sound files, Mistin Labs comes out with this, right? So what Walrus allows us to do is, because the Walrus network is essentially a system that's run by smart contracts on Sui. When you upload a file to the Walrus network, it creates an object on Sui that is verifiable proof that the file actually is being stored. It also includes information such as like how big the file is, the amount of time that the file is being stored for. So, you can set it to expire after a certain number of days, and the owner of the file can choose to pay for more storage to extend it, as far as they need. So suddenly you have the characteristics of an object being stored on Sui, and then you have the data of the object being stored in Walrus, and you have this object in the middle called a blob. You've probably heard this. Yeah. Everyone on Sui is talking about blobs. A blob is an object that just means that this data has been stored on Walrus. We can take that blob and then put it into another object on Sui. So for example, we have a type of object that expresses what a sound file is. So we have a sound file object, we have a blob object, we put the blob object inside the sound file object. So then that expresses that this sound file has this blob is linked to this piece of data on Walrus. And it's all happening within the context of the same ecosystem, which is very important. So for the first time in Web3 history, you have compute that's able to have access to storage. So I think it's really game changing for anyone that's looking to build in the same space that we are, whether it's in music or film or art or anything that involves people making things on a computer and then having to store the file somewhere in order to issue an asset on a blockchain. So it's really game changing for that. And I'm super excited. Yeah.
This brings us to the next thing you're building, Coda. Like you mentioned it, the music project, but what is Coda? What is that grand vision behind the Coda?
Wow, this is alpha. This is the first time I'm talking about this. So I have a music background. So it was during that time because I was working at basically the top tier. And all of my friends were the best of the best at what they do. Whether it's singing or dancing or some kind of art thing, they were the best of the best. It was the top of the field. And so many of them still had to get a side job at Starbucks. So how can you be one of the best dancers in the entire planet, but still have to work a side job at Starbucks? Why doesn't the creative industry is set up in a way to be able to support you? So it was really disturbing to me for a while, and I had this understanding from music school, from music business school, that between the artist and the fan, that's an economy right there. So the artist is the supply side, fan is the other side. So you have this economy where there's a lot of companies that sit in between the fans and the artists, and they extract a lot of value, whether it's when you have to do with music creation, distribution, selling tickets for shows, basically any sort of economic transfer between the artist and the fan. Right now you have a middleman in the middle that charges a fee. You've probably heard this many, many times. The fees are obviously way too high. And certain parts of, let's say, the economic plumbing between the artist and the fan, it almost feels designed in a way that's to be as inefficient as possible and to also rely on many different entities. And it feels like a black box that you don't have any transparency. From the artist's perspective, everything that they do, so it's if you're distributing your music, you're selling tickets, you're doing you're trying to license stuff to a film. So all of these are being handled by different entities that don't share information with each other. And so it just becomes this very like non-transparent, really extractive, quite toxic economy. So when you distill down what these middlemen actually do, they act as a source of truth. So when you stream some songs, some entity out there is keeping track of plays, how much an artist has to get paid. Same thing when you buy a ticket to a show. When you scan it at a show, some entity has a database in the cloud that kind of tracks if this ticket is like the right one or not. Is it real? Does it have the right barcode? So all of these middlemen act as source of truths. But these source of truths are structured in a way that is actually incentivized to keep the value and extract as much as possible. Because many of these are really large companies. They have infrastructure built out. They have like thousands of people they hire around the world to keep the machine going. And in order to fund all of that, and also they're set up as public companies, which answer to their shareholders instead of the artists and the fans. It's just this like perfect storm of like it's almost designed in a way where they have to take advantage of the artists and the fans. It's like fundamentally economically structured in a way that cannot work for the artist and the fan. But they're just a source of truth. And for a long time before we had blockchain tech, there was no alternative because like we didn't have a source of truth that was decentralized. And why blockchain is so important for this kind of use case is because blockchain is a source of truth. Like when you have a block, it describes all the transactions, all the changes that happened in the state of the blockchain in a particular like time range, right? So on Sui, every half a second or so, you have a record of everything that changed. So, and that is the truth. You can't go back and change it. So it's like, oh, okay. So blockchain is a source of truth. And because it's decentralized, it means no one can control it. And if no one can control the source of truth, no one can exploit it. So it's the perfect infrastructure to build like replacement plumbing for economies that are historically like very extractive by entities that sit in between supply and demand. So I was thinking about this for quite a long time. And for that really long time, maybe 3 or 4 years, there was no blockchain that was capable of building what we wanted to build. Because when we're trying to, so what Coda is, it's an alternative economy for artists and fans, where we try to replace as much of the plumbing in the middle with smart contracts. And there's many benefits to this, but why we can't do this on other blockchains, and certainly like people have tried to build a music economy on different blockchains. There's a few on Solana. I think there's probably a few on Polygon. But why it's impossible, and I'm going to say impossible, like why it's impossible to build it on other chains is the lack of on-chain data. Because a music economy is an attention economy, and an economy needs to be aware of the currency that is like, it's important to be aware of the currency that the economy is denominated in. So in a music economy, the denomination or the currency is attention. When a fan is listening to the music of an artist, they're essentially streaming their attention / focus to the artist. And that attention is quantified in the amount of seconds that a fan listens to, right? So there's this idea that in an attention economy, it's powered by the amount of time that you pay attention to something. Well, NFT standards like Ethereum, on Ethereum and all these other chains, they store the information off chain. So the blockchain can't process. The blockchain does not have access to how much time a song actually was, because that song duration is being stored on IPFS off chain. So on those blockchains, they're trying to build an economy that has no access to the data of the economy. But that's why like these things have never worked until Sweet. So we're trying to build this platform out. The smart contracts are close to completion. I think it's hands down, I think, the most ambitious Sui move code base in existence. And that's not just me saying that. Like some people from Miston Labs and Sweet have echoed that as well. And I think it's really going to set a new standard for what a consumer protocol means, because we're thinking about the entire stack from like account abstraction to economy to how to structure the economy in a way that disincentivizes bots from farming. The way we came up with is pretty cool. And we also have a new music format that we designed that will help artists express themselves in ways that existing formats have not allowed them to do so. We've also signed exclusive deals with a number of artists to experiment with this new format, because the existence of a new format requires the artists to produce their music workflow in a slightly different way. So instead of coming out and saying the platform is open to everyone should be able to upload their music, because we're designing a new format for music, we need to work one-on-one on a small scale first to really showcase the capabilities of this new format. So we'll be working with we have like 4 to 5 that are close to signing, and a few more that we hope to get in the next few months, and really work with them. Just like, this is a new way to do stuff. We hope someday this is going to be the new standard, and please help us get there. So yeah, we're gonna be making an announcement about that at Basecamp. And so I was able to talk a bit about like the broad goals. Obviously, there are like ton of more specifics that would be happy to jump on another one post Basecamp to dive more into that.
So one of the things I was really curious is about, like, you guys are brothers, right? How is it like operating, like working together and operating a project as brothers? I have not seen like too many like brother co-founders, but like from your perspective, what is that experience?
Yeah, I
Want
can
me to go
answer the
first?
first part. Yeah, I'll go first. So from my view, I think we cover 2 very different parts of the project. And so Brian, he's very like, I would say like logical, technical. So this directly reflects on what kind of musicians we are. So I'm also a musician. I've been playing piano for over 20 years. And Brian, he's a really good sheet music reader. Like, he can read a sheet music and then play it back perfectly, which I sucked at. Like when we were growing up, like, it would be so infuriating after practicing a piano concerto for like 6 months, and this guy just comes in here, reads it once, and plays it better. Like, that's not fun for anyone. So there was like he's very classical focused, cracked classical piano. I was like, could not do classical, but I played everything else. I played like, I was in like a rock band. I was in a Christian rock band. I did my own rock band. I was in like I did jazz for like 3 years. I did like I wrote my own songs and stuff like that. So like everything that wasn't reading sheet music, I could do. But when it came down to reading, he could do better. And then that slowly went to like sort of like what we studied. He did like music industry. He was like self-taught coder. Not okay. Here's my thing. Not everyone is born a coder because he's trying to bring me into these coding lessons and like these boot camps for coding. I just cannot do it. Like my brain is just not set up for it. Like I failed comp sci twice in college, and that is not by choice. Um, and it's just by design. Like when you write notes, like you write notes, most people write it like top down. I'm the one that draws a circle with an idea, and then my notes go like that, right? The freaking spiderweb one. So I think like when we were building this project, we're like, okay, like we both can cover two very different things. He can cover kind of like the foundation, the tech, the coding, everything, the logical, the finances. That's the most important one. And all of these different things. Now I'm like, all right, community, creativity, no playbook, whatever comes to my mind. And yeah, I mean, it's worked out, and like I think because we're brothers, and he's had more experience, like I can like go to him for advice from time. So like I remember when the whole Luna thing, or like I was so scared afterwards. Anytime the USD like depegged like 1 penny, I'll be like, do I sell? Do I sell? What do I do? Do I sell? Do I sell everything? And he's like, relax. And like so there was like that, and then whenever things get too heated, usually our mom will come in and be like, all right, relax, like just relax. So yeah, that's my take from the younger brother side.
I think that working with a family member, especially one that has like a opposite skill set, can either end in a disaster or something like really good. I think that because Kotaro and I grew up in an Asian family where I often had to take responsibility for like bad things that he did. Uh, we we developed this, I guess, relationship that uh, that was very close, and I think that has actually helped a lot because I think we both also feel like we want to keep this, just the two of us. Uh, Historically, we've never done anything such as trying to approach a VC, and sell some shares to them, because we know something like that. If you have a VC involved that's constantly trying to shape things, that's going to change the dynamic of what our brand is. So I think like working as brothers actually has helped us maintain that brand since we had from day one, and it really has become sort of a meme because when I've talked to either other devs on Sui or uh, even investors in the past, they're always like, okay, like how big is your team right now? Because from based on the output that we have, such as building out Prime Machin, defining standards on Sui, building out the 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 music platform, like we're working on a million things. You would think that the team is fairly big, but it's just like me and Kotaro. And we have a writer, we have an artist, and occasionally I'll contract like a front end dev. Lately, we've started to grow the team in Japan a bit more to handle the operation side of stuff here in Japan. And we've recently hired one of our longtime members of our community to just as another person. But like the theme still is it's a family business and we're just hiring our friends. There's never been this idea of like we need to scale, like scale. And still, I think it's really impressive and really showcases what a really, really small team can do when they're focused on being small. Because I think a lot of the projects that we've put out, it's almost unbelievable that it was one creative person and one dev. So I think working as brothers really helps us push each other to really define what the limits are. It's certainly been really interesting for me to watch Kotaro grow as a leader and as a person, I think, because when we were growing up, sometimes I felt like he had no personality. Like he was just this like a being that I always just saw as my little brother. He was always just asking me for advice. Sometimes it seemed like I was defining his path for him. He was asking me for advice, like, oh, what should I study in school? What should I do in this? And I don't have the answers, right? But I had to give my best advice as possible. So since starting Studio Mirai, I feel like he's really found his calling. So I think it's been both fulfilling from a personal perspective as well as just like a business one.
Perfect. From an outside perspective, when you follow both of you guys in Twitter or the things that you write or from the videos, it's more like a yin and yang kind of vibe you get, because Kotaro is doing entirely different stuff than you, BL. And so that is cool to watch. And I have a lot more questions, but I think it's a cool point to end this conversation because we can do one more after you have announced Coda. That would be cool. So
Yeah.
really excited about all that's coming. So looking forward to that. And looking forward to the next conversation.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in. And before you go, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates and insights. Your support is what keeps these videos coming. So see you in the next video.